know I hate condescension and stupidity. I'm not intending it that way at all. So if it sounds that way, it's totally unintended. But line in the sand is kind of just, it's too simple a way to think about this because everybody's line in the sand is different. You're obviously a patriot. Your line in the sand was crossed a long time ago, so the line in the sand doesn't mean anything. There is no, you're already there. You're like, I get it. Like, I'm losing my country. I'm there. I'm going to vote, donate to candidates, go to the school board, complain at the school board. I'm going to get out there. I'm going to support law enforcement in my community, do whatever I'm going to do. And I'm not taking this crap anymore. I'm going to use my social media accounts. I'm dragging 10 people to the polls. I'm going to support the Second Amendment publicly. You're there. But there is no collective line in the sand. And your question's a valid one, that when do the people on the margin who've been kind of like the NPCs for a while, just sitting there while the FBI's raiding people's houses, the Democrats interfering in elections, crapping all over the populace, like, when do they wake up? And the short answer is, gosh, if I knew, like, I'd put it on a skywriting machine and put it out there and say, everybody have no fear. The world's going to change again next week. But I don't know that. So it's your job to highlight that line in the sand to the people whose line in the sand hasn't been crossed yet. Yours is already gone. That's your job. To go show them, you see that line? That's in the sand. And if that line gets crossed, it's going to get uglier. Wake up. Good question. I appreciate that.
Hey, Tony Colombo here for the great team at All Solutions Pest Control. All Solutions is the pest control company Christine and I trust with our home because they don't cut corners and they take the time and use the best products available to help protect your home at the highest level possible. Call All Solutions Pest Control today at 636-486-7888 and learn more about our special $67 introductory offer or visit us online at allsolutionspestcontrol.com.
If a pest-free home is your goal, call All Solutions Pest Control.
If you are on Medicare, you need to listen to this message. Open enrollment for all Medicare participants starts October 15th. This is a very critical time of the year for you to make needed changes to your plan.
This is Mike Butts with MB Health Insurance Agency. Regardless if you are new or renewing your health insurance, the process can be confusing and very time-consuming. MB Health is local here in St. Louis, and we will handle your enrollment quickly, properly, and effectively. Find us on the web at mbhealth.com.
MB Health can also help small businesses find the perfect medical coverage for their employees. That's mbhealth.com.
We are the NFHS. That stands for the National Federation of State High School Associations. But really, what we stand for, together with the MSHSAA, are the 171,000 high school sports and performing arts students in Missouri. And so, we stand. We stand for the runners, debate team members, and basketball players. We stand for their coaches, officials, and adjudicators. We stand for the drummers, football players, and actors. We stand for the golfers, singers, and swimmers. We stand as the national leader and advocate for these essential activities and all who participate in them and make them possible. Because it is our purpose to ensure that high school students get to play, perform, and compete together. To learn more about who we are and what we stand for, visit nfhs.org.
KLGY HD3 Clayton, K270BW Bellefonte, KNBS Bowling Green. This is News Talk STL at 1019, 94.1, and always streaming at newstalkstl.com.
Breaking news this hour from townhall.com. I'm John Scott. The state of Florida preparing for the arrival of a Category 4 hurricane. Hurricane Ian could strike as early as Wednesday. Tampa and St. Petersburg are among the most likely targets for their first direct hit by a major hurricane in a century. Ian already getting stronger and is forecast to move quickly over Cuba's western tip today. Congressman Patrick McHenry of North Carolina hopes to see big changes if Republicans regain control of Congress in the midterm.
We're sitting in the Congress that spent the most money of any Congress on record. So the first thing we have to do is bring fiscal discipline and oversight of the fiscal mess that the Democrats have brought.
Congressman McHenry tells the Salem Radio Network Republicans will also seek to ease the regulatory burden he says is tightening production and raising prices for nearly everything people need to buy, from baby formula to microprocessors. Also at townhall.com, a gunman has opened fire in a school in central Russia, killing at least 15 people, including a high number of children.
The shooting took place in school number 88 in Sahirovsk, a city 600 miles east of Moscow in the Udmurtia region. Governor Alexander Brachalov says the killer's name was Artyom Kazantsev and that he was a resident of the town and registered at a psychoneurological dispensary. There are suggestions that he adhered to the Nazi ideology because he was in a t-shirt with Nazi symbols in a balaclava. It's not exactly clear how many children and adults are among the dead. I'm Charles de Ledesma.
On Wall Street, the Dow is down 223 points, but the Nasdaq is ahead 8 points. More at townhall.com.
Charlie Dombeck here from Key City Capital. As a practicing CPA for nearly 30 years, I have found that 80% of your ability to grow your wealth is dependent upon two factors: taxes and investment performance. At Key City Capital, we improve investment performance by diversifying capital into off-market investment opportunities in passive rental real estate and alternatives like asset-backed lending. We recover dollars that clients unnecessarily pay in the form of income taxes, creating a lifetime annuity of savings. We are a sponsor of passive, affordable single and multifamily residential rental investments, which are located in Sunbelt landlord-friendly states. These investments are the top choices in a rising interest rate and inflationary environment. They represent a store of value, protecting your capital from market volatility. Learn how we at Key City Capital can help you ultimately grow your wealth rapidly. Connect with me at keycitycapital.com or give me a call at 817-912-1569.
From the News Talk STL Newsroom, I'm Joey Vasevich. Singer Post Malone went to the hospital again Saturday after experiencing what he described as difficulty breathing and stabbing pain, forcing him to postpone his show in Boston. It was the second time in a week that Malone went to the hospital. He was treated for bruised ribs after falling into a hole on stage at the Enterprise Center last weekend. Governor Mike Parson on Friday named Circuit Judge Renee Hardin-Tammons to the Missouri Court of Appeals at St. Louis. The governor made the appointment pursuant to Missouri's nonpartisan court plan, in which the Appellate Judicial Commission gives the governor a list of 3 applicants from which to choose. Beginning today, a Metro Transit shuttle will transport riders who need to travel between the St. Louis Downtown Airport Sauget Business Park and the 5th and Missouri Transit Center. The van is a temporary alternative to the number 2 Cahokia Metro bus while construction crews complete work on the Curtis Steinberg Bridge. That work is expected to be completed in 2 months. A 49-year-old Florissant man died after a crash Friday afternoon involving a Metro bus in North St. Louis County. Investigators say the Metro bus was stopped on the road of the route when the man approached it and struck the rear left side of it. And in sports, the Cardinals fell to the Dodgers 4-1 in LA last night. Next up, the Redbirds head to Milwaukee for a 2-game series. Tomorrow's game starts at 6:40 p.m. For in-depth coverage of these stories and more, go to newstalkstl.com.
From the News Talk STL Weather Center.
I don't know if there's such a thing as a perfect weather pattern, but this is pretty darn close. Beautiful weather today. The high 72 degrees with low humidity, a little breezy, but not bad. Lots of sunshine and a few clouds, but even nicer tomorrow. Fewer clouds, low humidity, not as breezy, 72. Turning cooler on Wednesday and remaining at or below normal for temperatures with sunshine right through the weekend. I'm KMOV First Alert meteorologist Kent Earhart.
This hour of News Talk STL brought to you by All Solutions Pest Control, 636-486-7888, or visit them at allsolutionspestcontrol.com.
If a pest-free home is your goal, call All Solutions Pest Control.
Tony Colombo.
Libertarianism is all about individual liberty.
Katie Fitzpatrick.
Oh, good for you.
Colombo and Katie on News Talk STL.
Time to rise has been engaged. We're better, best to real.
Katie on 101.9 and 94.1 News Talk STL. I am Tony Colombo. My partner is Katie Fitzpatrick, and we are here with you at the beginning of what looks like is going to be a beautiful weather week in the St. Louis area.
It's beautiful outside right now.
Yeah.
Gorgeous.
Be like sunny and pretty mild.
A little breezy out there, though. I can't lie about that. A little breezy, but it's nice.
It's windy?
Very windy, but it's a nice breeze. It's a beautiful day. It's going to be a beautiful week. I'm pumped.
Have we ever discussed my affinity for wind?
Mm-mm.
I think wind is cool.
Who says that? Who says that?
I do.
I think wind is cool, bro.
I've said it before, and I've had that same reaction from many people.
But what does it mean?
On the air.
Why do you like wind?
I think it's cool.
But what does that mean?
I don't know. I just think it's cool. I think it's cool that like you're standing outside and
it's whipping.
For some reason, air's blowing on you.
Yeah. Okay.
Like it's
just happening.
How does that happen?
I don't know.
How does that happen?
I don't know, Tony.
Wind is fascinating.
Why
is it there sometimes, not there sometimes? I mean, I know all the real reasons, but I'm saying like.
But you're right. It's like
it's cool. But man, I like wind.
I'll tell you when it is not cool. When it's real cold in Missouri and that wind is hitting your face and it feels like a ton of bricks in the middle of January.
Yeah.
That's when the wind is like, yo, tone it down.
I like wind.
I like wind.
I like wind. I think it's cool.
Oh,
I think it's cool.
You're strange, Tony. You're a strange person.
I know. There's a world full of strange people out there, and we will be discussing many of them as we go through the day today. We are also going to talk to our guest, who is not strange, who is actually a very perfect person to talk to on a day like this. Grover Norquist, president of Americans for Tax Reform. He will join us as we continue to sort of digest and react to the recent interest rate hike by the Fed and, of course, just the general state of the economy with inflation and labor issues and supply chain issues and everything else that we're facing. So we'll talk to Grover about all of that stuff as we go through the day today. Should we just jump right in here?
Let's do it.
All right. Russian President Vladimir Putin has granted full Russian citizenship to U.S. whistleblower Edward Snowden. Snowden fled the United States to Russia after revealing information about extensive surveillance operations being conducted by the National Security Agency, the NSA. And he is now a Russian citizen by presidential decree. This was reported this morning. The announcement comes roughly 2 years after Russia granted Snowden permanent residency. The country first granted Snowden asylum in 2014, and he has since resisted calls to be extradited to the United States. Snowden faces espionage charges that could land him in prison for up to 30 years if he were to ever be brought to the United States. Russia has protected him. There have been presidents that have attempted to bring him back, but
what a crazy story he has.
Russia and Putin have always protected him, and now he is an official Russian citizen. Snowden stated in 2019 that he would be willing to return to the United States on the condition that he got a fair trial. At the time, he said, quote, "That is the ultimate goal, but if I am going to spend the rest of my life in prison, then my one bottom line demand is that we will all have to agree that at least I will get a fair trial." Former President Donald Trump had stated that he was considering Snowden's case for a potential pardon in 2020, but he never took that action. Those familiar with the situation say the move likely signals Snowden is working more closely with the Russian government. It's believed he is likely now subject to Putin's mobilization order. If you remember, Putin basically instated the draft. I have friends who are Russian and have family in Russia, and I've heard that their family members, the men in their family that are in their 50s and 60s, are just waiting for the call.
Wow.
Like they are
That's terrifying.
probably going to have to go
50s and 60s?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Like every able-bodied male in Russia is like on the list.
Yeah, not a fan of that.
Like there's no it's not just the young kids.
Yeah, like in their 20s
No,
or 18
right.
or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
Man,
like
that is-
retired middle-aged dudes.
with back problems and inflammatory legs.
Yeah.
That's a crazy thing to do.
Yeah, they don't call it a draft over there. They call it a mobilization order. So those familiar with the situation say the move likely signals Snowden is working more closely with the Russian government. He is believed to now likely be subject to Putin's mobilization order, but will be assisting Russian intelligence rather than serving on the front lines. As I read the story, it seems to me like this was more for Putin than it was Snowden, because Snowden had already been granted permanent residency, but he wasn't a citizen, so he couldn't. So things like the draft and other things that all Russian citizens have to.
He didn't have to participate.
Yeah, but now he does. So to me, this seems it when you read the headline, it comes off as more. You initially think like, oh, this is something that that Putin is doing to stick it to the United States, and it's good for Edward Snowden because now he's a citizen, so he'll be he can dodge jail over here. But that all had already happened. He'd already achieved all of that. So I honestly think that this is more for Putin than it is for Snowden.
Oh, I do too, for sure. It's crazy to think about Edward Snowden's story because I remember in college, I was taking like an ethical course in media and law, and his story came up in one of like the main debates that we had in this class. And it was just wild because everybody was so split. The room was so split on how they felt his story went down. And I do think it's a fascinating, interesting discussion to have, especially when we have so much more knowledge of what our government is actually doing to its people right now. I mean, Edward Snowden was kind of the start of being like shocking a lot of people, the majority of the world, to say like, hey, you are being spied on, just an FYI, and this is how they're doing it, which was compromising his job and his security clearance. But now that we had Trump, and Trump was like, oh boy, if you thought that was interesting, get a load of all of this. And what we've learned from Edward Snowden till now is like, holy cow, our government really, I mean, people really should not be trusting the government.
Do you think that he should be in jail for 30 years? If he was over here?
I don't know where I live on this because I think
I don't.
I don't know where because I understand.
I very strongly don't believe that he should be that he should be subject to 30 years, that he's some kind of espionage traitor.
I wouldn't say he's a traitor by any means, but I would definitely say there should be.
A lot of people would. A lot of people would.
Exactly, and that's kind of where was this interesting discussion in college because a lot of people did say that. But I understand there needs to be a level and degree of punishment because of what he did with his job.
Agreed.
And I think I'm totally okay with that.
The ends don't always justify the means. I mean, this really is a do the ends justify the means debate.
But what he did was, I feel, correct because it was his moral obligation. It was his duty, he felt, that was a higher calling than what his job laid out to tell us what was happening and that it was wrong.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
I don't look at Edward Snowden as some super. I don't think that he's
like
a
saint.
superhero. Yeah, by any stretch of the imagination. I think that he's got his own personal, obviously, his own personal goals and whatever in mind, and I'm sure he loves the fame to a certain, like him and Julian Assange, are kind of the same, kind of two peas in a pod. I mean, I know their situations are obviously, are different in many ways, but they're both kind of whistleblowers uncovering, secret documents and that kind of thing. So, I don't think much of them personally. I don't know that much. Julian Assange is more sort of public, and you kind of hear a little bit more from him.
Yes.
And he's kind of a
rebel rouser.
Yeah, I don't know I don't know the exact word to use, but D-bag. Let's go with that. So I don't think that they're heroes by any stretch of the imagination, but if they were putting the U.S. military in harm or people, things like that, that's a totally different story. But when they're just exposing some of the
corruption
and things like that, yeah.
Now, are you someone that's
again, I don't believe the ends always justified. Like breaking laws to that's a case by case. Sometimes the ends justify the means, in my personal opinion, but it's not an always thing. So
is your hang up though, like the time that he would be allotted to serve in prison if he came back home, like the 30 years? Is that what, or are you like he shouldn't have to serve any time at all in prison?
Yeah, I'm sure that I'm sure he's broken some laws that would require some kind of punishment, but so I don't know like enough about everything to say like, well, he should get
I don't
3.5 years.
Be done.
I don't know
scot-free.
I don't know what that is, but I don't believe that he should be in jail basically for the rest of his life.
Yeah, I agree with that. So. I think that I totally agree with that. It's just an interesting story.
It is. Well, now he doesn't have to worry about it because he works for Vladimir Putin. No. So now Vladimir Putin can literally put a military uniform on him and make him go
and
to
do
Ukraine
whatever he wants.
And
you think he's happy about that?
Fire a bazooka.
You think he's like, yeah?
I think he probably has a pretty sweet deal with the Russian government. I'm sure he works in there with their intelligence department. And
golly,
I
would never want to be him.
I would imagine his benefits, the benefits of having Edward Snowden on your team have declined over the years because whatever he was close to or had connections to or internal knowledge about, it's been like 10 years now. Mm-hmm. So since he's had those connections. Yeah, exactly.
But he's still a smart guy.
He's still a smart guy, and he still knows how certain things work, or at least how they, certain agencies, think or operate or whatever. So I'm not saying he has no value to them, but I don't think his value is nearly what it was 10 years ago.
I agree.
So interesting stuff. Interesting stuff as that saga has continued. And I wonder if down the road, if a president were to ever pardon him, like Trump was talking about doing, I wonder if he would come back. And I wonder if he could come back even. I mean, officially he could. But I wonder if Vladimir Putin would let him come back now, or if they would block him from leaving.
That's a good question. That's a really, really good, interesting question.
Like if he ever does get that chance, because he's always said that he wants to come back to the United
States. Want to come back. Oh my gosh, I would want to come back. But
he doesn't want to be in prison.
Would Putin let that happen? I don't think he would.
No, I don't know.
Heck no.
When he was just permanent residency, before he was a citizen, before today.
Can you decline something like that? Can you be like, I actually don't want to be a citizen?
No, you probably can, but I'm sure that Snowden, it was probably like, you're a citizen or we're not going to protect you anymore. So I'm sure Snowden didn't have a choice in that matter.
Pick your battles, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yikes.
But yeah. Super interesting story. I'm sure it's not over with, and it is something that we will definitely keep an eye on. You know what? Let's go ahead and take our break now. And because I've got some other stories here, but I don't want to lose any time with Grover Norquist, so we can get into some of the issues with Grover and then continue to go through the headlines of the day after we interview Grover Norquist as we continue here on Colombo and Katie. Don't go anywhere. We'll talk to Grover Norquist, president, of Americans for Tax Reform. We'll talk to him about the latest surrounding the United States economy and the markets and the rate hikes and the supply chain and all of those wonderful things when we get back. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to Colombo and Katie on 101.9 and 94.1 News. Several weeks here in the St. Louis area with the weather, and if you want to make sure that you are able to keep your family comfortable and your home at the proper temperature, whether it's you're warming it or cooling it, you need to make sure that if you have any issues, you call our friends at Agers Heating and Air Conditioning. Doing right by the customer, of course, is their number one priority. And that is why you can trust them. That's why we trust them with our home. That is why it just takes that fear, that anxiety. You know, it's one of your HVAC system is one of those things like your car. If you're not a mechanic, if something goes wrong and, you just feel helpless. Like, what can I've got to call, got to put this in somebody else's hands. And I hope that I can trust them to, have my best interests at heart as they are diagnosing this problem for me. And that is exactly what Agers HVAC is all about, whether it be repairs or replacement. If you're having any issues with your existing system, you call them. If you are ready to put a new system in your home, you call Agers and they'll show up at the mobile showroom, which is incredible. It's nice enough to live in, and it comes right to your front yard. You don't go anywhere. They park it in front of your house. You go into it, and you get to touch and feel and operate and learn all about all the different systems that you could put in your home. You get all of that information, so you are armed with that information and then able to make the best decision for your house, for your family, and for your budget. So if you are having any trouble with your HVAC system, call Agers now and learn more on the website, callagers.com. A-G-E-R-S, callagers.com.
The Range St. Louis West is all about safety. That's why training is a critical part of what we do. No one wants to be in a situation where seconds count, but help is minutes away. But if that day comes, are you ready? No matter what your firearm experience level is, we have courses and instructors that can help. The Range St. Louis West is the area's premier training facility, shooting range, and all things firearms retail facility. Check us out online at therangestl.com or stop by and visit with our professional staff. The Range St. Louis West. Are you ready?
I'm Missouri's Secretary of State Jay Ashcroft. Voting is a right and a responsibility. You can always vote a provisional ballot on Election Day, but using a photo ID is the best way to vote. A valid Missouri driver's license, for example. If you need an ID, my office can help you get one for free. Either way, your vote counts. Check out sos.mo.gov or call my office. And remember, in Missouri, if you're registered, you can vote.
Sponsored by Missouri Secretary of State.
Tim Jones and Chris Arps in the afternoon.
Monday, featuring Jeff Rowe, political pro at 4:05. Former U.S. Senator Jim Talent, Susie Moore of Red State at 5:25.
Tim Jones and Chris Arps. Weekdays at 3:30 on News Talk STL.
Joining us this afternoon. Grover, thanks again, as always, for your time. How's it going?
It is going well. The country's woken up to some of the problems we have and who's causing them. So
Yes.
the November election is looking better. Unfortunately, the economy is looking worse. Your 401k is looking worse. Your individual retirement account is looking worse. Your paycheck is smaller than it used to be in terms of real dollar value, all of which means things might get fixed.
Do you? It's kind of heartening to hear you say not all the bad things, but the thing that you said at the beginning, that people are waking up to it. So you believe that? You believe that Americans, voters that are not always as engaged with, the news cycle and politics have that it's gotten to such a point. The effect, the impact of this has gotten to such a point where some people are looking to things maybe that they wouldn't normally do, and are changing their minds and maybe getting ready to hold people accountable for the mistakes that they've made.
Oh, absolutely. Look, the establishment press has wanted to use any word other than inflation, and they certainly haven't wanted to talk about declining standards of standards of living, and they don't want to talk about the collapse in the stock market that affects that 58, not 60% of Americans have a 401k or an IRA. Even more than that are in the stock market in some way, and their life savings has been made less valuable. It's about $7 trillion drop in the value of property owned by Americans. That's rather steep. And now you might say, well, sometimes the press can ignore something and it doesn't happen. Hunter Biden, computer. But there are other things like the price of gasoline, which you're reminded every time you walk down the street. You see those big billboards telling you what the cost of energy is. And when you go to the grocery store, you're reminded of the cost of energy. And when you look at your 401k or IRA monthly report, you're reminded the value of your life savings has gotten worse. So, the networks and the establishment press can try and focus your attention on any number of things other than what's going on. But we are reminded every day, we're having our faces pushed in the damage that Biden and the Democrats have done to the American economy.
So Fed raises the interest rates 0.75 of a point last week. It's the third month in a row that they've done that. They're going to raise it at least another 0.75 of a point by the end of the year. So, those are some pretty hefty actions being taken by the Fed. But what does it really mean? How much is that able to combat the inflation and everything else that has been induced by Biden and his policies? What do you think about what the Fed did last week and the plans for the remainder of the year?
Yeah, the head of the Federal Reserve said when he announced what he was doing that this would slow down the economy. That's a polite way of saying throw people out of work and have a recession. But Biden's gotten to the point where he has to go, can I take your mind off inflation? We're going to slow economic growth and go into a recession in the near future if we aren't already there. He's going to make people go out of work in order to fix inflation that wasn't there, right? There wasn't any inflation if it was transitory, if it was gone last December, as he told us it was going to be. Why are we passing the bill? Remember the Inflation Reduction Act, which will increase inflation because it will spend more money than expected and raise more in taxes than had been expected or than they promised. So this is a deliberate, this is like leeches, the doctor's going, well, you don't look very good. We will bleed you more. This is a very painful fix to inflation. Reagan cut income taxes. Reagan deregulated the economy, and we had strong economic growth. But there was a steep recession in 82. And then as soon as the tax cut took full effect in January 1st of 83, we had strong economic growth. The bad news with Biden is he got us the inflation, just like Jimmy Carter did, and then he's giving us the recession, slow economic growth, as Jimmy Carter did. But there's no Ronald Reagan to turn it around just yet. We're going to have to wait till a new president. Now, good news is a Republican House and a Republican Senate can stop some of the bleeding on the spending. They could say, we're not spending the money you wanted to. We're not going to give you all those IRS agents. You know what we're going to do? We can hire some people at the IRS. They're going to answer the phones when the American people have questions, and they will answer those phones, and they will tell people what they need to know. But you're not allowed to not tell people what the rules are, because when they call to ask a question, they don't get their phone calls returned, and then turn around and go harass them.
Grover, we're seeing more people living paycheck to paycheck because of this soaring inflation. And as you mentioned in the beginning of our interview, you said that people are feeling this in real time when it comes to gas and groceries and just everything that happens with their pocketbook. There's a lot of different issues that are going to be hot button when it comes to how people vote in this midterm election. But will inflation be the primary thing people are going to be voting in the ballot box in November for the midterm elections?
Well, right now it looks like the economy, and that includes both inflation, which makes your paycheck worth less, and slow economic growth, and the cost of energy, and the cost of food. And as we're going into a cooler winter than people had expected, which just proves global warming, I think, probably. But because it's going to be cooler, we will have higher costs of energy in the Northeast and in the Central North region, all across the country. People will need to heat their homes more than other times, and people will be very noticeable of the lack of jobs and so on. So I think that there's a real recognition of the damage done, but add to that crime, for crying out loud. Who thought crime was going to be a big issue? But a number of the big city mayors and the attorney generals in blue states have decided to start letting murderers out of prison. The character running for Senate in Pennsylvania wanted to let everybody who committed second-degree murder out of prison. Second-degree murder is on purpose murder. It's just you didn't plan it out for months ahead, right?
Right.
Yeah. You ran into him. I'm going to kill you now. First-degree murder is when you plan it for a couple of weeks, right? And for crying, it's not like a mistake. I backed into you with my car. This is on purpose. Killing people.
Right.
No, they should be really let go. It's that sort of thing that's really scaring people in cities and areas near us. I live in Washington D.C. The crime rate's getting pretty rough, and who knew the Democrats would once again go crazy in letting criminals out on the street?
This is such a great point, because typically when we're talking to you, Grover, or we're talking to another economic expert, or we're talking we're in that realm, we're not talking about law and order, and we're not talking about crime. But I don't know if you saw another story, and unfortunately, this is not new. This is just the latest of these. Over the weekend, the video footage from the convenience store in Philadelphia, speaking of Pennsylvania, in Philadelphia, just being completely overrun by looters, just right in the middle of a regular day. Dozens of people walking in, taking what they want, destroying the place, and walking out. And as I said, this is not a one-off. So as crime like that, especially crime against businesses, and people say, oh, well, if it's against a big corporation, then it's no big deal. They can afford it. That's not going to hurt anything. If they're just don't do it to mom and pop shops, and it's a victimless crime. Essentially is what they try to claim.
Yeah.
How much does that type of behavior hurt the economy directly?
Well, these are often in areas with low-income people, and what we knew the last time they did this with Black Lives Matter was trashing CVS's and so on. When you do that and a drugstore closes down, it is now not a 5-minute walk to go and get medicine for yourself or your children, but it's a half-hour walk. And the more dangerous it is, the less people are willing to walk that far. So the damage is to the entire community, because at some point, more and more businesses are leaving dangerous areas because the police are told, don't, react
don't
poorly
engage
to people stealing stuff. And as a result, the grocery store you went to shuts down or has very limited hours. The pharmacy that you want to go to closes down, and it becomes a long project to go and get drugs from someplace when you need them.
Grover, okay, now I have to ask one more question about the midterm elections, because now my head is spinning whenever we're talking about crime and we're talking about the differences between these red cities and these blue cities, which is something that we've been highlighting ever since the end, I would say, of the pandemic. We've been seeing this crazy dichotomy between how the blue states and how the red states acted in the pandemic and acted after the pandemic. And we're seeing that impact the way people transition from these blue states to these red states, where a lot of popular people like Joe Rogan, like Dan Bongino, like Elon Musk have moved from these blue states because they couldn't handle the restrictions that happened because of the pandemic and are now in these red states and they're thriving. But a lot of that has to do with now these lingering effects of, are people still requiring masks? Is there a lot of homelessness? What's the crime like? I think a lot of people are putting that under the guise of, is the economy rolling still in these blue states, and is it worth it to stay here? And I'm wondering, because we have that data now after we've seen the destruction and damage of what we did with these lockdowns and such, are people also considering that when they go to the voting booth in the midterm elections?
Oh, well, absolutely. Among other things, when you move more people out of California, out of New York, you have fewer congressmen from New York and California, and more in Texas and Tennessee and Florida and Arizona. So this kind of fixes itself. If you chase enough honest, hardworking people out of blue states, they will have fewer votes, not in the Senate, but still votes in the Senate, but they'll have fewer votes in the House of Representatives. And add to that, this is the way to fix California, is for enough people to leave California that even the liberal politicians in California decide this isn't working. The governor of California, Gavin, who's completely nut job left wing, he's opposing a measure, tax increase measure, which would have raised the top rate on rich people. And he said this would be very destructive to the California economy. So the former governor of New York opposed additional tax increases on the rich in New York, because he said more people will leave, you stupid, crazy Democrat state legislators. Before I emigrated to the United States, I grew up in Massachusetts. And back in the 80s, Massachusetts was collapsing, and it turned around because people realized so many people were leaving that they voted to put spending and tax limits in Massachusetts. It's the top rate in Massachusetts is a 5% tax increase. You'd think it'd be much higher with a Democratic state, but the people, through the initiative process, limited the damage the taxes can do because there was the right to leave. The reason East Germany didn't reform is you couldn't leave.
Yeah.
But places you can leave have to reform. So federalism works. It's the genius of the Constitution.
Got a couple minutes left here with the president of Americans for Tax Reform, Grover Norquist. And Grover, wanted to ask you about, with inflation and the rate hikes and, everything sort of dominating the conversation right now when it comes to the economy and to the markets. One thing that we haven't heard a whole lot about, we've talked about gas prices, and we've seen them come down a bit. They're still higher than they should be. So I don't like the idea of this administration, taking credit for lowering prices when they're still way higher than they should be. But one thing that we haven't really heard about in the headlines at the front of the news cycle has been other issues that were before, that we were talking about, things like the labor shortage and the supply chain issues. When it comes to those issues that have been more behind the scenes here recently, when it comes to the news cycle, is that getting any better? Like, are those issues getting better? Like the gas prices have been getting better, far from back to where they should be, but getting better? Or are we continue to be faced with, or business owners continue to be faced with, supply chain issues, labor shortages, and other things that are making life very difficult for them across the country?
Well, what creates the labor shortages in the United States is the high level of welfare spending. People haven't gone back to work because they still accumulated so much money from the various welfare programs, and you don't have to pay your rent, and you don't have to pay for your college education anymore. And so people say, I'm not going back to work. The labor force participation rate, which is the number of people under 55 who could and should be working, has fallen. Okay, one of the reasons the unemployment numbers went down under Biden is that people quit looking for work. If you quit looking for work, you don't count as unemployed because you're not in the labor force, because you left the labor force, because you don't want a job, because you've already got money from welfare. So this is a very serious problem. It happened under Obama as well, whereas during the Trump recovery, you saw people entering the workforce. People who thought, well, I wasn't going to look for work, but look at all these new jobs and they're paying well. I think I'm going to go look for work. And when more people, usually in a recovery, what you see is the labor force, the unemployment goes up because people who weren't looking start looking and they didn't get a job. You know, the first day they start looking, they'll have a job. So it's when the economy is doing poorly and people leave the job market, stop looking, that tells you have a real problem. And that was created by the very high welfare spending. Some ridiculous percentage of the checks that were sent out during COVID and more recently under Biden ended up in China and Russia and in all sorts of overseas countries and illegally. Luckily, some hardworking criminals in the United States got some too. So this was a lot of wasted money, and some of it did damage by keeping people who should have gone back to work from doing so.
Grover, one last question before we let you go. Obviously, people can learn more about your organization, Americans for Tax Reform, and follow you and learn about the important things that you guys are working on and what to look for. But just in general, as people are getting ready to go vote for, what are the kinds of things that you tell people to look for in a local politician and a national politician? The kinds of bills or tax cuts or whatever it may be. What are some of the things that voters can look for and know that what types of things to support or vote for when they are in the ballot box this November?
Certainly. The first thing to do is ask the politician to go on their website and find out, have they signed the Taxpayer Protection Pledge to never raise taxes? Are they going to look to reform government, or are they going to look to raise taxes? The vast majority of Republicans in the U.S. House and Senate have signed the pledge never to raise taxes and kept that promise. And this is also true at the state legislative level. About 18 governors have signed the pledge to never raise taxes. So it's a gut check. When things go wrong, when there's a problem, are you going to raise taxes to paper it over, or are you going to reform government so it costs less and refuse to raise taxes? So ask your elected official, have you taken the pledge? And a lot of local elected officials make that commitment as well.
Great stuff. ATR.org. Americans for Tax Reform is ATR.org. Grover Norquist is the president for Americans of Tax Reform or for Tax Reform. And Grover, it's always really great to talk with you. Always appreciate your time and look forward to having you back on again very soon.
Thanks for letting me join you.
You bet. Thank you so much. Grover Norquist there, president of Americans for Tax Reform. All right. Lots more stories to get into. A California rep spoke out against law enforcement in her state, and the story hit home for me, and I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why when we get back. This is an interesting story, and I think it gives you some insights on the, hypocrisy, no surprise there, but how sometimes Democrats don't like it when the shoe is on the other foot. Let's put it that way. Well, I'll explain in just a moment. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to Colombo and Katie on 101.9 and 94.1 News Talk.
money could have gone to basic services like schools and public safety. And studies show these subsidies don't produce the promised jobs and growth. If developers want to build a sports stadium or shopping mall, why should they be given our tax dollars to do it? It's time to reform economic development subsidies. The Show Me message has been brought to you by Show Me Institute and Show Me Opportunity.
Trump and Porter's supporters, according to local media reports. In the aftermath of the attack, though, Porter appeared to harbor some ill feelings toward the Irvine Police Department. Quote, "Your police department is a disgrace," Porter told Irvine Mayor Farrakhan in a text message from the time exclusively obtained by Fox News Digital. "I will never trust them again," she went on to say. A Porter spokesperson said that the representative was, quote, "upset that a planned family-friendly town hall was hijacked by extremists who made constituents feel unsafe, including using hateful language in front of children." Okay, here's where I have a problem with this story and her attacking the police department because she was having a rally and protesters showed up and they used bad words. And I don't like that either. I don't like that at all. But how many times have we been told, how many times, I mean, I've covered multiple protests in person. Anybody that works downtown, how many times have we been told that, hey, when protesters are blocking the streets, blocking traffic, police don't do a thing about it. I don't know if you've ever personally been a part of or covered one of the protests or seen them in person. The language, the things that are being screamed at police, citizens, just chanted, whatever it may be, is not suitable for children's ears.
Mm-hmm.
However, if they're protesting things that people on the left believe in, progressives believe in, then there's no problem with that. You can be as vulgar as you want. You can block traffic. You can, you can
wear things.
You certainly,
say stuff.
people, it was, I've said this so many times about when I was covering Ferguson, how I would be down there on the nights that were quote unquote peaceful. And I'd get home and you'd be turn on the news and you'd hear about how it was a peaceful night of protests in Ferguson. And technically that was true. But if you were there, you do not feel peaceful. You feel like it's a powder keg. Like at any moment, something could go wrong because tensions are high and threats and language and
it's
things like that.
It's vile.
Yes, in many cases. So it's hypocritical and ironic when I read a story of a Democrat politician who is trashing a police department because there were protesters at her rally that her words, her statement from her spokespeople, the thing that she is upset because a family-friendly town hall was hijacked by extremists who made people feel unsafe and used bad language.
So she's upset with the police department because
they didn't remove those people, because they didn't remove those protesters, which is my point. If police would have removed protesters, and I'm not just talking about Ferguson, certainly not just, in fact, Ferguson now is so long ago politically. There's been many more
riots and
rallies and protests and marches and things. So I'm not talking about one specific thing. I'm talking about many of them where police were basically clearing the way in the city of St. Louis for them to march down the streets and stop traffic and everything else. And they were certainly people, I'm sure, that felt unsafe because of the language and the intensity and what was happening, and streets are blocked, and they're certainly using bad language also. Right. But that's all okay if you are
the right kind of protester.
Protesting the right thing.
I also
and if not, you're mad at if not, you're mad at the police for not removing the protesters. Which is it? Is it okay to protest or is it not?
I also think that this brings in a huge debate about what is considered peaceful protesting anymore.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think that's been in question for
quite
several
some time.
years now. Yes.
But I mean when you see a police officer and they are told to engage, at what level is it that they're like, okay, well, they're shouting bad things and it's vile and it's disgusting to hear them shouting it, but there's no real damage being done. There's no harm to another person being done. So I think we've moved the goalpost on what is peaceful and when the police should interact and should start the arrest and should start rallying people to leave the premises. But that goalpost wasn't set by quote unquote conservatives. That goalpost was set by people, progressives mainly, that felt very, very strongly about the things that they were protesting, one of them being defunding the police. And they set the rules and the standards now on what is peaceful and what isn't.
Yes. And you cannot blame police or expect police to remove one group of protesters.
Yeah.
Because you don't like what because they're Trump supporters.
Right.
And try to use the excuse of, well, they're using bad language and they're kind of making people feel unsafe when you don't do that at all on the other side.
Welcome to the summer of love.
Yeah, absolutely. We talked about that convenience store riot with Grover Norquist. We'll get into that. Also, Illinois lawmakers looking to ban guns. We will get into those stories and more in just a moment on Colombo and Katie on 101.9 and 94.1 News Talk STL.
Paul Cook for Our Free Water Store in Chesterfield. Dude, our water is dead. Find out what living water is. It could be one of the best things you ever do for your health and for your family too. It is for me. This water has helped millions of people all over the world supercharge their cells. Experience it for free over and over again. Walk in there at the corner of Woods Mill and Olive, Our Free Water Store. Discover true health today.
Have you been floored? Not until you've gone to Michael's Flooring Outlet. They've been a locally owned and operated family business for more than 28 years. You want variety? Michael's has carpet, hardwood, laminate, ceramic tile, luxury vinyl, natural stone, and many other options. Save money and get quality at Michael's. Plus, your installation will be done right the first time when you hire the experts at Michael's. You can shop in store at one of their 3 convenient locations or shop from home. Check out everything that Michael's has to offer at igotfloored.com.
News Talk STL is proud to have Doug Voss of Safe Money Radio as part of our lineup each week. Doug has been a staple on St. Louis radio for many years as one of the leading financial experts in the area. Doug and Safe Money Radio is on 3 times every weekend, but in case you miss anything, you can check it all out at DougVossSafeMoneyRadio.com or call 844-676-SAFE. That's 844-676-7233. Doug Voss is a registered representative. Securities offered through DHL Securities, LLLP. Member FINRA and SIPC.
Tim Jones and Chris Arps in the afternoon.
Senator Jim Talent.
We live in an age where saying common sense things is considered to be controversial or even revolutionary. Like, we need oil and gas. Yeah, I think we do. Or maybe we shouldn't shut down the schools. Maybe it's not a really great idea when troubled teenagers come in and just to rush to pump them full of drugs.
Tim Jones and Chris Arps. Weekdays at 3:30 on News Talk STL.
All Solutions Pest Control is the place to call if you are looking to get a pest control service out at your home. Christine and I are big believers and have been for years in having a pest control service. And when we moved into our new home a few months ago, we were very lucky, thrilled to meet and learn about the folks at All Solutions Pest Control. And they are now the pest control service that we use at our home, and we love it. We have had great results, and right now, All Solutions Pest Control has a $67 introductory offer that you can take advantage of. So for just $67, you can have them come out, do the service, see the results, see what they're all about, and decide if you want to move forward. We love them. I think you will too. So whether you have a pest problem or just want to prevent a pest problem, learn more about All Solutions Pest Control at allsolutionspestcontrol.com.
KLGY HD3 Clayton, K270BW Bellefonte, KNVS Bowling Green. This is News Talk STL at 1019, 94.1, and always streaming at newstalkstl.com.
Breaking news this hour from townhall.com. I'm John Scott.
Floridians up and down the Gulf Coast should feel the impacts of this as up to 36 hours before actual landfall due to the size of the hurricane.
That's Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. He says Hurricane Ian is expected to make landfall around the Tampa Bay, St. Petersburg area, but the forecast still being pinpointed.
This is a really, really big hurricane at this point. The diameter, the width of it's about 500 miles wide. So if you look at the cone and if you look at where they have the landfall going, I think the landfall is still Levy County. The impacts are going to be much, much broader than that.
Ian could strike by Wednesday. Also at townhall.com, one person shot and a Chicago police officer wounded at a police facility on the city's west side. Shots were fired shortly before noon local time at a building in Homan Square. The officer taken to Sinai Hospital in stable condition. He was not shot. The other person taken to another hospital in critical condition with at least one gunshot wound. President Biden welcoming the World Series champion Atlanta Braves to the White House. He says the Braves made an improbable yet joyful run the World Series last year.
You made the playoffs and beat the Braves, the Brewers and the Dodgers, and then you beat the Astros to win it all, forever known as the upset kings of October.
The president praised the team for their accomplishments both on and off the field.
Channeling its reach and resources to feed the hungry, support our veterans, give kids a safe place to play, and so much more.
Braves CEO Terry McGuirk says he hoped they'd be back to the White House soon again. A lower close on Wall Street, the Dow off 333 points and the NASDAQ was down 65. More at townhall.com.
Relief factor, pain relief that's natural, pain relief that works, and pain relief that attacks the source of the pain. That's the experience of tens of thousands of Americans who are taking Relief Factor right now. See their incredible video endorsements at relieffactor.com and then order your 3-week quick starter pack for just $19.95. That's less than $1 a day. Find out if it can work for you like it works for me by ordering your 3-week quick starter pack today. Relieffactor.com, relieffactor.com. Be the next success story.
Hi, my name's Adam Barada. I'm the owner of Advantage Gold, the highest rated precious metals firm in the country. Now, we've won the Best of TrustLink award 4 years in a row because we educate our clients on how to buy gold and silver the right way. We don't pay celebrity spokespeople millions of dollars. We'd rather pass that value on to you. Call 800-900-8000 and speak with one of our experts. We'll send you a free gold kit along with my latest national best-selling book, The Great Devaluation. Call 800-900-8000. Call 800-900-8000.
General Motors gets out its checkbook.
The automaker plans to spend $760 million to renovate its transmission factory in Toledo, Ohio, so it can build drive lines for electric vehicles. It's the first GM engine or transmission plant to begin the long transition from internal combustion engines to EVs. GM has a goal of making only electric passenger vehicles by the year 2035. The investment will keep the jobs of about 1,500 hourly salaried workers at the Toledo plant, which now makes 4 transmissions used in pickup trucks and other GM internal combustion vehicles. Rhonda Rockstra reporting.
The government will attempt to try to block a partnership between American Airlines and JetBlue. A trial schedules to start on Tuesday. The government says letting American and JetBlue work together on flights in the Northeast will hurt competition. Breaking news and analysis at townhall.com. Tesla CEO Elon Musk spending time with lawyers for Twitter. Musk answering questions ahead of an October trial that will determine whether he must fork over the $44 billion he agreed to pay for the social platform before attempting to back out of the deal. Kindergarten not mandatory in California.
Governor Gavin Newsom vetoed legislation Sunday night that would have required children to attend kindergarten before entering the first grade at a public school. He pointed to the costs of mandatory kindergarten, about $268 million a year, money he said is not accounted for in the California budget. Those who want to require kindergarten say it could help close the academic opportunity gap for low-income students and students of color, as well as help children develop important social skills before the first grade. I'm Rita Foley.
More on these stories at townhall.com. I'm John Scott.
From the News Talk STL Weather Center.
I don't know if there's such a thing as a perfect weather pattern, but this is pretty darn close. Beautiful weather today, the high 72 degrees with low humidity, a little breezy, but not bad. Lots of sunshine and a few clouds, but even nicer tomorrow. Fewer clouds, low humidity, not as breezy, 72. Turning cooler on Wednesday and remaining at or below normal for temperatures with sunshine right through the weekend. I'm KMOV First Alert meteorologist Kent Earhart.
So many ways to listen to News Talk STL. Enable our Alexa skill.
Hello.
Hey, Alexa.
Yes, I'm listening.
Play News Talk STL.
Welcome to News Talk STL, conservative talk radio for St. Louis.
.30. If you missed anything in that 2 o'clock hour, don't forget about our podcast. You can download the Colombo and Katie podcast, subscribe to the Colombo and Katie podcast, anywhere that you get podcasts, Spotify, Apple, Amazon, Google, all of those places. You can also subscribe to the Colombo and Katie YouTube channel, which we stream live on every single day, as well as post other videos on the brand new Colombo and Katie YouTube channel. And of course, you can watch the live stream on the News Talk STL Facebook page, News Talk STL Rumble page, and at newstalkstl.com. So all those different ways to keep up with everything happening here with the radio station and with the show. And that goes for all of the shows here at News Talk STL. But make sure you are subscribed to the Colombo and Katie podcast and to the Colombo and Katie YouTube channel, and you will never miss anything, like the great conversation we had with Grover Norquist. I always love when Grover is able to join us. He's the president of Americans for Tax Reform, and great conversation with him about the current state of the economy and where we are potentially headed and all of those things. So if you missed that conversation, go back and check it out. And one of the things that we touched on with Grover was the effect that crime has on the economy, which is something that we don't usually talk about when we're talking about markets and the economy. We're usually talking about, the supply chain and inflation and interest rates and things like that. We're not usually talking about law and order. But as we talked about with Grover, with more and more with crime on the rise in so many places across the country, that absolutely starts to have an effect on businesses and the economy. And as we mentioned, there was over the weekend a brand new footage. Did you see any of this? This footage out of Philadelphia?
So bad.
The Wawa convenience store in Philadelphia. Dozens of people just ransacked the store, just threw food products off the shelves all around the whole place, and just and stole everything that they wanted, and then just left. And it was very organized. It was dozens of people all at once
rushing
walk in, take everything, cause a giant scene.
It's so gross.
And then leave, which has become I don't want to say the norm, but it's certainly become this is not a unique thing. This is not like a one-off situation. This in cities that have made it very clear that they're not going to stop this. We've seen how many videos of people singularly, just one person going into a grocery store or a convenience store or whatever, and just loading up their cart or loading up a bag with whatever they want and walking out, and nobody does a thing about it. Like, that's been going on for a while, and now this more organized of 30 or 40 or 50 people all at once going
looting
in
and
clearing off the shelves and
I'd
just
be out of there
leaving.
so fast if I was the employee.
And not a single person is held accountable.
I would be the person that stuck around to tape it. God bless you.
Did you watch and did you listen to any of it?
I think I saw a woman trying to order a sandwich still.
She was mad.
I'm like, are you kidding me?
Yes, that's what I was going to bring up.
Okay.
I'm so glad you saw it. That's exactly right.
I'm like, what is this?
This guy, there's an employee behind the counter filming. And there's only like 2 primary videos of this. So it's easy to find. Go look it up. You'll see it yourself. He's filming as all this is happening. There's, who knows, 20, 30 people in this little convenience store just emptying the place, throwing food around, knocking shelves over, everything. And this girl walks up and says, are you guys still making the food?
Are you making a sandwich?
They had like QT, like how gas stations have like the order thing, and you can like order a sandwich and they'll make them for you there. She's like, are you? And then he says, well, no. And she goes, and then she kind of stops and she comes back and she says, well, but are you going to make, she said, are you going to make my food or are you just going to keep recording?
Excuse me.
And I'm 10 feet behind her is like a
tornado of people
screaming and stealing and knocking things over and throwing stuff around like it's chaos.
And she's dead serious.
She says the words, are you going to make my food or just keep recording? And he says, it's going to be a while. And then I wish, he said, well, it's going to be a while. And then she starts to complain and the video cuts. I don't know if it was a TikTok thing or a timing or if he did. Like, I would have, I looked everywhere to see if there was a longer version because I really wanted to hear what her argument was of why he needed to be making her sandwich as the whole business is just being looted.
See, this is where, and this is like, I would have been out of that business so fast if I was an employee. I would have seen what was going down. I wouldn't have videotaped. I would have booked it out the emergency exit, called 911 and waited. Because if it's
there's a I don't know if it was a police officer or a security guard, but there was a uniformed officer
that's so scary.
And they just stepped back.
You see 20, 30 kids, I don't actually know the age, but you see 20, 30 people come into the store and just bum rush it.
I don't think police, because that's kind of the thing, is police
have been told you don't do anything about
Yeah, don't
this stuff.
engage.
That's why people are doing it, because they know that the police won't stop them. It's been made public knowledge that the police will get in trouble if they try to stop something like that.
And I'm not about to get killed over some Lay's potato chips.
Now, I don't know. This guy was there. I agree. I tend to agree with you, like, as far as, but it was pretty clear from the video that they didn't care one bit about the guy or anybody working there.
Yeah, they just wanted the stuff.
Yeah, his safety. He wasn't being threatened. They weren't trying to rob him or anything like that. They were just clearing out the store.
That is so sad. That is such a sad thing for us to get over a pandemic, for us to unlock the United States and to have these businesses try to be brought back to life only for people to loot and to go crazy in these stores again.
Mm-hmm.
So sad.
And then not only do you have, police being told not to do anything about it, you have states like Illinois that are continuing to work towards banning guns and taking away your Second Amendment rights. Story that is new out of the state of Illinois. Our friends are right across the river there. Many Democratic lawmakers want to pass an assault weapons ban to prevent, they say, to prevent mass shootings. The Gun Violence Prevention PAC and Every Town for Gun Safety bill strongly supports the plan. However, advocates from those organizations said more can be done to address gun violence. So this is something that I think we're going to get Aaron Tarlow from Southern Armory in the studio with us one day very, very soon to see what is exactly happening over there in Illinois as they push for another gun ban and another infringement on your Second Amendment rights. So we will definitely keep a close eye on that. You have a story for us?
I'm going to stay in Illinois.
Let's do it.
So the CEO of McDonald's told business leaders in Chicago that tough economic conditions, including rising crime, have made it more difficult to attract employees, and suggested the city does not have the adequate plan in place to address the issues and prevent companies like his from joining the growing list of companies that have fled the Windy City. This happened last week, possibly even 2 weeks ago. But Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot said something back to the CEO of McDonald's. She fired back after he highlighted the difficulty rising crime in the city has caused for his business, telling him he needed to educate himself on the matter. She says this, I think what would have been helpful is for the McDonald's CEO to educate himself before he spoke. The McDonald's CEO warned in a speech at the Economic Club of Chicago luncheon last week that it was time to face facts and acknowledge that companies have been leaving the city over the past year due to part of the rising crime. The fact is, there are fewer larger companies and headquarters in Chicago this year than last year. There are fewer this month than last month. This is the CEO highlighting this. He also said the rising crime is hurting his company's ability to recruit top talent and that employees have been hesitant to return to work at the downtown headquarters due to crime concerns. In the press conference, Lightfoot pointed out a letter from the World Business Chicago president, Michael Fassnett, and she says lays out in exact detail all the good news, economic news, and what's happening in our city. And she says, I'm just going to focus on those things and not the comments of the CEO of McDonald's. I find this, I know that the CEO talked about this again, highlighting that that happened last week, which was very interesting for the CEO of McDonald's to come out and make comments saying, we are relocating because we cannot get people in here. The business is not booming anymore. Employees are scared to death and we can't take it anymore. So we're not going to be doing things in Chicago. Peace out. See you later.
And how can you blame them?
This is the weird part of this story. Everybody with an iota of knowledge would say, yeah, that sounds about right, because crime is absolutely incredibly rampant in Chicago, except for the mayor, Lori Lightfoot, who says we're still getting good news and good economic news coming out of the city of Chicago. So I'm just going to ignore what the CEO of McDonald's has to say.
Or what the other stats say about businesses leaving.
We're not talking about the CEO CEO of some small business that has a franchise in the middle of nowhere. We're talking about one of the largest industries in the United States. And you can't take a second to look at him and say, maybe he has something to say. Because he seemed reluctant to even say something like this. It didn't seem like he came, whenever he was talking at this economic business club, it didn't seem like he was doing this for political gain, for any political reason. He was just saying, making a statement, look at the statistics, look at the data.
He was explaining
and this is what's happening.
Yeah.
And for her not to take a moment and pause as the mayor of Chicago and be like, yikes, that's pretty bad.
Look, it's unbelievable to me that, to your point, Lori Lightfoot's behavior and the behavior of other leaders in these Democrat-led big cities that are losing businesses, they're losing citizens, they're losing schools. Like Grover Norquist talked about in the last hour, how if there's a convenience store, or a grocery store in one of these areas, one of these struggling areas, and then it goes out of business because of crime and safety, and they can't keep their doors open, so they either go out of business or they move their location to a different area. Now the people that live there don't have anywhere to get groceries from, and their lives become even more difficult. So not only are they now in a high crime area, they're now in a high crime area, and they can't even get bread and milk, because the businesses are leaving. And instead of these leaders like Lori Lightfoot and right here in downtown St. Louis, instead of them working, putting advantages in place, putting attractants in there to bring businesses back to these cities or keep them in these cities, they turn the businesses into the bad guy.
Yeah.
And just say, if they don't want to be here, then they're just hateful and wrong about this or that or whatever the other thing is. And no problem gets solved. The businesses don't stay.
And this isn't good for the people, for you to deny. This is purely political. We knew that from the minute she opened her mouth and said blah, blah, blah about how Chicago's the best. But you're not doing any good, specifically for the people that still live in Chicago, if you can't even acknowledge the problem and say that there is a problem. You're not doing anyone any favors if you're like, let's just ignore this because it's not politically savvy for me to say anything, and everything will work out the way as it should with me not trying to intervene and solve the issue of crime. That's not going to get any businesses to come back to Chicago, especially after you were just closed up because of the pandemic. You're not doing anyone any favors by playing stupid.
You know who else cannot admit doing anything wrong?
Who dat?
Meghan Markle.
Uh-oh. Why are you the way that you are? Why is she this way?
Palace aides take revenge on the difficult Duchess. That's her nickname.
the difficult Duchess.
In a second mind-blowing book detailing life with the Duchess of Sussex. Now, more than ever, Harry and Meghan are to be held up to public scrutiny. It has been an open secret in the UK. I'm reading this story from the perspective, the person who wrote it is in the UK, and it says it has been an open and secret here in the UK that from the beginning, the Duchess, even when living in Kensington Palace, was difficult. She was all smiles for the camera, a role she loved, even if she felt she and Harry should be paid to meet and greet the public. She was playing it off in front of the cameras and anytime there was a microphone near her, but she was triggered way back in 2019 when they went to Africa. Meghan, you will recall, even claimed in that set-up interview with ITV and Harry's good chum broadcaster Tom Bradby when the question was asked, how are you doing? She said, "Thank you for asking if I'm okay, because no one has bothered until now," and fought back tears and smudged her makeup as she was crying. It was then revealed that all the questions were pre-planned. So she knew he was going to ask how you're doing, but pretended to be surprised and said, "Thank you so much for asking if I'm okay, because nobody's asked me until now." Stories are spilling out even more now. Pure and simple, because before the Queen passed away, they had some kind of protection, a level of respect for the monarch who reigned over the UK for 70 years. Harry knew she was loved by the world, so at 96, no one wanted to upset her. But now, those royal staff members that were involved, who have felt angry and betrayed by Harry and Meghan, are ready to let loose, claiming that their lives were a living hell thanks to the Duchess's temper and bullying. And
wow,
yeah.
She just died. She just died.
Well, that's what they're saying. That's why they're saying they're coming out with it now. That none of the people that were the royal aides that have been wanting to go after Meghan didn't want to do it while the Queen was alive, because they didn't want the Queen to have to deal with all of the drama.
But have some freaking respect. You can't respect your husband's family enough to just kind of hang back and be like, I don't need to make a buck out of writing this gossip magazine about the Queen.
Oh yeah, no, but the book is about her. The book is by royal staffers going after Meghan, and they waited until the Queen died.
Okay,
because they didn't want the Queen to deal with they didn't want to stir up the drama.
But Meghan is are you saying that Meghan and Harry though are going after the Queen now that that's not part of it, right?
Well, no, that's not part of it yet.
Okay.
That's not part of it yet, but that's the next part of this story is that people are saying that, and the quote is that she is about to go nuclear. That's the quote. Get
Christine Colombo on the show.
Because this is now the second book that has come out with firsthand accounts of people that worked with Harry and Meghan about how they were treated and bullied, and how she has this terrible temper, and she talked down to people, and was just so...
Gee whiz.
Yeah.
Gee whiz.
Is so elite. So she's getting just exposed right now, and they're saying, don't think for a second, though, that somebody like Meghan is going to take it laying down.
She's coming out nail sharp.
That she's about to go nuclear, so the drama is just getting started over
there.
That's the kind of drama you like to preoccupy yourself with. I like to preoccupy myself with the Tim Jones and Chris Arp Show, which is starting right now. Colombo and Katie back tomorrow at 2 o'clock. Subscribe to the podcast. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you haven't already, Colombo and Katie on your favorite podcast platform or on YouTube. And don't go anywhere. Tim Jones and Chris Arps coming in now. Thank you so much for listening to us and supporting us here at 101.9 and 94.1 News Talk STL.
Love it or leave it. You better gain weight. You better hit bulls out. The kid don't play.
Decision 22 News.
Inflation, gas prices.
Decision 22 Analysis.
The things the American people want to hear about.
Decision 22 Opinion.
Same old tired talking points.
In St. Louis, Decision 2020.